Back in our parents' generation, it was work hard, go to the right college, get the right job, and retire at 65. These days, following that same blueprint doesn't work.
From the trading floor at JP Morgan to the top of the personal finance world, Vivian 2, also known as your rich BFF, has transformed how millions understand and manage money.
I actually go down this path of being a W-2 employee. Everything was awesome, but as things happen on Wall Street, the head of my desk was let go, and half of my team got fired. I got moved from my manager and assigned to another manager. He couldn't find a single thing right about me. He was like, "You're too girly to have this job." I just walking over to my original manager and being like, "I'm quitting today." When I ended up quitting my job, I had the best Monday of my life.
As the founder and CEO of Your Rich BFF, she's taken her expertise in finance and built a multimedia empire that simplifies complex financial concepts for everyone. With over 8 million followers across platforms, a chart-topping podcast, Net Worth and Chill, and a New York Times bestseller, Rich AF.
I was actually put into a summer camp program by my parents. I credit a lot of my academic drive and ultimately success to that summer camp program.
Her journey from translating financial discussions for her immigrant parents to becoming a digital trailblazer and empower others to achieve financial freedom. This is Vivian 2.
If you are not optimizing, if you are not investing, if you're not budgeting, you can wave goodbye to retirement. Money's the most important thing. People think it is, it's not. Your most important thing is your time.
Welcome to Success Story. I'm your host, Scott Clary. The Success Story podcast is part of the HubSpot podcast network. HubSpot not only supports this show, but they support entrepreneurs. That's why I'm such a huge fan of HubSpot. And I'm very grateful for HubSpot for supporting the show because they help entrepreneurs. And as a fellow entrepreneur, I know it takes a lot to grow your business, a lot of audience attracting, a lot of sales, a lot of marketing, a lot of lead scoring, a lot of channel management, a lot of content, a lot of long days, late nights, a lot of weekends, a lot of wishing there was an easier way, but there is. With Breeze, this is HubSpot's new collection of AI tools. It's easier than ever for marketers, for entrepreneurs to attract audiences, to increase leads, to score customers, and to close deals fast, which means pretty soon your company will have a lot to celebrate. Visit HubSpot.com/marketers to learn more. So why does everybody need a rich BFF?
Because the world is too hard right now to be broke. I feel like, back in our parents' generation, it was like there was an opportunity for the American dream. Well, I guess in your case, the Canadian dream. But it doesn't really work like that anymore. For them, it was work hard, go to the right college, get the right job, and if you get that W-2 job and climb the corporate ladder, you can ultimately have 2.5 kids, golden retriever, white picket fence house, tire swing, take 2 vacations a year, and retire at 60, 65. Okay, sounds good enough. And that sounds like a very happy life for many, many people. But these days, following that same blueprint doesn't work. We actually now have to, as a society, understand money and understand our finances better than ever because we can't afford to have what I like to call leakage that our parents had. They could afford to be a little bit more careless with their money. They didn't have to optimize at every single turn. But these days, our generation, if you are not optimizing, if you are not investing, if you're not budgeting, if you're not saving, if you're not making smart money decisions for the majority of your life, you can wave goodbye to retirement. You're not going to get there. You're not going to get there in the way that you want to get there. And I think that is a hard reality that we have to accept. But the sooner you get to that mindset of it is harder than it used to be, but there are still things I can do now to make it possible for me to have my happily ever after, the better off everybody will be. And that is why Your Rich BFF is here to help you with that journey.
It's so interesting because, again, I come from a family that was super risk adverse.
Yeah.
So like dad worked in government and mom worked for university, took time off, which I mean, my brother, but she worked in universities and they all had pensions. Like pensions don't exist anymore. And I remember growing up, people have asked me why did you choose to do something different, not go into law, not go into sort of like a safe, secure, whatever kind of job that was expected of you. And it was really because I had to do the math. And I know you do math on your FU number. I was doing math on my retirement number. And I was figuring out in Canada, taxes are significant. So if I make X amount of dollars for X amount of years and so much is taxed and I save it away as a little nest egg and I don't have a retirement or a pension, because My dad's pension is 70% of his best years till the day that he dies. That kind of pension doesn't exist anymore. So that's defined benefit. Now you have like defined contribution where you can contribute to like, I guess, RRSPs in Canada, 401ks down here, but still that pension doesn't exist. So I'm stressed out. I'm like, okay, how much money? Like it's like 10 million, 15 million, 20 million do I have to have when I'm 65? And the job didn't make sense for me. But there's no more financial education for people. So now they're just stuck knowing that, okay, I don't really know how to retire, but I don't have a plan B or an alternative. And I think that's the issue.
And I think that like is why so many, I don't want to say Gen Zers are defeatist, but there is a general defeatist attitude about the financial system as it currently stands. Because to your point, people know that they're not getting there, but then they don't know how to get there. And I think a lot of us like to have that internal locus of control of saying, okay, so even if I'm not in a good spot now, there are XYZ things I can do to get to a good spot. We don't give the education in schools of how to get to a good spot with your money. So people are concerned, they're worried. And of course, when you are overwhelmed and you want to stick your head in the sand, the easiest thing to do is go and buy something nice today and not worry about tomorrow. But ultimately, tomorrow comes and you're always going to have to pay the Pied Piper. And like when you are 60, 65, are you going to be comfortable not having a single dollar set aside for future you? Because future you is here. And that's really scary.
Super scary. And you're living longer than ever. And you don't know how to retire. And I don't think people are actually thinking about it. I actually don't think that we've come to the point where people are realizing that they're 55, 60 and they don't have enough to retire. And oh my God, what am I going to do? What was your sort of inflection point in your career? Because you did come from more traditional 9 to 5. High earning potential, maybe walk us through your career, but also still traditional 9 to 5.
Yeah. So, for a little context, I come from a household of Chinese immigrant parents. I'm an only child, only daughter, no pressure. And I did everything right. I was the valedictorian of my high school, got into the University of Chicago, top 3 school in the US, like good grades, graduated with like a 3.8 with honors, ended up going to Wall Street. And my parents were like, this is our American dream. Like, our daughter has made it to Wall Street. We have succeeded as parents. And unfortunately, uh, my parents were very loving throughout their entire lives with me. And they have taught me a lot about budgeting and saving. And obviously, I'm still very, very close with them. And I'll call them for advice or like, their POV on stuff. But they didn't have the education to give me the information about investing or demanding my worth or growing my income or starting a business or anything like that. So getting that high earning W-2 job was this huge opportunity. And I met my mentor, and she was the one who actually taught me, hey, are you contributing to your 401k? Like, make sure you're picking the right health insurance plan. Are you saving? Are you investing?
This is somebody you're working with?
This was my first manager. She was the only other woman on my team. And man, did I want to be just like her. She click-clacked into work in a new pair of Gucci stilettos, flung her 18th designer bag that I had seen onto the shelf, and I wanted to have those things. She was the only person, I was obviously 22 at the time, but she was the only person that I knew who owned their apartment in New York City. Like, she just had it all, and I wanted to be just like her. So I took a lot of her advice, and that was a pivotal moment because I started to think about money very differently. And before, it had always been scrimp, save, stow cash under the mattress. And now it was, how do I make more? How do I get my worth? How do I earn? How do I build, grow? Instead of saying, how do I make sure there's less going out? It was, how do I make sure there's more coming in?
That's interesting because you're still learning from somebody that at this point spent their whole life working a job. Huge earning potential, but there's going to be this very long path to get there.
Yes.
And I think that's the difference too. I mean, if you want to make a lot of money, it does make a lot of sense to be in the top 10% of finance or legal or medical, and you'll make a shit ton of money.
And I think the beauty of that type of role is that it's almost guaranteed.
Yes.
You know, to a certain degree of likelihood that if you are a decent person at your job, within 10 years, you will make a certain amount. And you can comfortably get there and can depend on it almost year after year. The whole your rich BFF thing.
That's what I was going to ask. Like, why did you not go
Yeah.
that path?
Yeah. So I actually thought I was going to go down this path of being a W-2 employee. I love my manager. Everything was awesome. But as things happen on Wall Street, the head of my desk was let go and half of my team got fired. So it was like 30 traders and half of them got the axe pretty much overnight. This new boss, head honcho, brings in his own guys, and it's a very different team than the one that I had signed up to join. And all of a sudden, I went from, they used to call me like R8 superstar, like rock star, because I was like, the smart new like girl on the desk. And I got moved from my manager and assigned to another manager. And he couldn't find a single thing right about me. Didn't like that I'd come into the office, do a little work, and then take 5 minutes to go put on a little bit of makeup in the bathroom at 7 a.m. He didn't like how my nails click-clacked on the keyboard. He didn't like the way I dressed. And he made a comment to me. He was like, "You're too girly to have this job." And there was
What year is this?
no, literally. This was like 2017.
What the fuck?
Yeah. And the straw that broke the camel's back is one day I came into work with a long cardigan on, and he looked at me and touched his hands together and bowed and said, "Is that a kimono?"
I don't know.
Like, yeah, like you don't even know what to say to that.
That's insane.
And I, at the time being, I think I was like 22, 23 years old, I really didn't know what to say to that because I am the smallest fish in this proverbial pond. I don't have the, laurels to rest on. I can't yell at him. I can't say anything back.
And probably your self-worth is tied up into this job at this point.
Deeply tied
Yeah.
because all of my self-worth had been tied to the validation of the success in my life, as well as the money. I was the highest paid person out of all of my girlfriends because I had gotten this job straight out of school. My parents were so excited to brag to the aunties about what I had gotten this job, And suddenly this job became a fucking nightmare. Am I allowed to swear?
Yeah, you can.
It became a nightmare because I felt like no matter how hard I worked, no matter how smart I was never going to be enough. Like not my work, but me. I was never going to be enough. And that was so, so demoralizing to realize that there were things about myself that I was not going to be able to change to make this guy like me. And then to know that he was the one with the power to be in the back room, slamming the table, saying, "This girl's talented. We need to make sure she gets a raise, make sure she gets promoted." He wasn't doing that for me. He didn't like me.
Well, he's not even treating you like a human.
Human.
Yeah, it's not like he's going to go to bat for you.
And I just remember walking over to my original manager, to her desk, and being like, "I'm quitting today." And she turned to me and said, "Don't be an idiot. You don't have a job lined up." And I'm like, "True."
That's good advice.
And she was like, "Tough it out, grin it and bear it. We'll talk after the close." So the close being the market close at 4 p.m. And so we went to dinner that night and I told her what had happened. And I could just see like the disappointment in her face because I'm sure her being, 15 years my senior, she had experienced that, but in a very different era. And it was probably
stuck with it.
And she really she's got a tough skin. And she had earned a lot of her stripes, to the point where being a 5'2" woman, the sales guys who were probably a foot taller than her would cower in fear if she said something to them. And so I think it really upset her that I was dealing with something like that in this day and age. And we had a long conversation about what my options were, and I started looking at other jobs. I was interviewing with hedge funds, I was interviewing with asset managers, and then she was like, also, my girlfriend who left Goldman Sachs went into tech and media. She works at a media company now. Do you have any interest? I'm like, I will literally go work retail if it means I can get away from this man. And so I ended up meeting with her friend, and that woman ended up becoming my first boss at BuzzFeed.
Was the advice she gave you to be thoughtful about leaving, do you think that was good advice? Or do you think you should have, for people that are listening that are dealing with a situation like that, because I have conflicting feelings about that too.
Yes.
When you jump, it doesn't matter if somebody didn't let go or they quit or they're fired. when you have that like sink or swim moment, people usually find something better. Very rarely outside of COVID or some like very, very significant, world event that impacts hiring or whatever. In a normal economy, I always find that people do land somewhere better and something that they enjoy more and something that's more in line with who they are as a person. But I think the biggest hurdle that people have to get over is taking that first step. So do you think that it's smart to stay in that environment knowing that you could maybe, because the type of person, there's certain kinds of people that would stay in that environment because they look for a job and then they wouldn't give it their all. They wouldn't be looking with their all because a paycheck's still coming in.
Yeah.
So what is sort of the takeaway that you have from that experience? Should somebody leave? Should somebody stay in that moment?
I think you and I have conflicting views here. I am so grateful she told me to do that because for me, I was able to give the job hunt my all because I had a paycheck coming in, because I didn't have to worry about how I was going to pay my $2,000 a month rent in New York City while still affording groceries, while still, essentially being able to keep my life together. Yeah. On top of that, I didn't have a gap on my resume. When I ended up quitting my job, I had the best Monday of my life because I knew that in 7 days I would have a new job to start and I could faff about for 1 week, really, really enjoy the city, enjoy my time, but I wouldn't have to go very long without money. And I wouldn't have to worry about if I had to take the right job or the right now job. Because if I had burned through all of my savings and I was coming up on the next rent payment, I would have taken whatever job had come my way. But because I had a paycheck coming in, because I didn't have to take the very first offer I got to wait out and find the right job, the job that was going to have the benefits I wanted, that was going to have the opportunities that I wanted, and going to give me the opportunity to grow. And on top of that, I got to take the extra time. When I got my offer, I negotiated it. And that took HR going back and forth for another couple days. And I didn't feel any sort of pressure because, again, I still have money coming in the door, can count on my paycheck. And because I had the luxury of the time to negotiate extra, I got more money.
So I don't disagree with you. The only reason why, like the X factor that's sort of informing like what I just mentioned was the fact that the guy was such an asshole and berating you and belittling you and being kind of racist and just a really big piece of shit.
I will say, after I made that decision, I wasn't so worried about, I can't talk back to this guy because he's going to be the one writing my end of year review. I knew I was headed on my way out. And so I said, I'm going to do what's right by me. I'm not staying late no more. I am going to go get drinks with my girlfriends. I took my full 2-weeker and I was like, normally like I check in. I'm like, everything okay? How's things? 2 weeks, you didn't hear from me. Like, I'm dead to you. Nope. I took my vacation. I actually quit the Monday after I came back from my 2-week vacation. And I cannot tell you, the old sales guys, the guys who had been there even before the new manager had come in, when they found out that I pulled that stunt, they were like, yo, that's a pro move. That is a veteran move. Who taught you that? And we had a good old laugh, and I still have a wonderful relationship with so many of the people that I started with. I mean, I think it's so funny. I make content about how old rich white men have always had financial education. Most of my first mentors were old rich white men, and they were my biggest advocates. And so for them to turn around and say, yes, are you leaving our team? But am I proud of the way you did it? Do I feel good about you standing up for yourself? And then to maintain a relationship, to be able to still go grab drinks with them today. Like, I mean, I think it really speaks to those types of people. And at the end of the day, when you have a manager and you have a team that is going to support you and help you thrive, you're going to. Yeah. And when you don't, you better get out of there. You better get the hell out of Dodge. Yeah. Because you're not going to win. You won't.
But that's okay. So that's a really good point. So the people that you surround yourself with, obviously that's going to give you access to education. And you've mentioned before that a lot of people that have a tough time understanding that they can make money too and they can be wealthy too. And they don't have those influences growing up, but you didn't have those influences growing up. How important are those influences in somebody's perception of wealth, money, success?
It is unbelievable. Unbelievable. I'll give you an example. So I grew up in what I would consider to be like a middle class neighborhood, upper middle class neighborhood. My parents' mentality was always buy the worst house in the best school district so I could go to the best public school. And I did. I went to a very good public school, um, you know, got a great education. But the students at my school, most of them, aspired to essentially have their parents' life. And I probably would have aspired for the same until I was actually put into a summer camp program by my parents. For them, we wouldn't take vacations a year. Like it was not fancy. My family did not have money like that. But they would spend $3,000 for me to go to the summer camp. And it was 2 weeks long. And it was called Center for Talented Youth. And it was hosted on college campuses where they would bring middle schoolers and early high schoolers who had taken the SATs as like 10, 11-year-olds and scored high enough to enter into the vast majority of colleges. So these are like very, very astute academic students. When I got into that program, suddenly I wasn't with a bunch of normal kids from my normal neighborhood. I was with the smartest kid from every school. And suddenly I realized I am not the smartest person in this room anymore. And that put a hunger in me that I could not get from my regular education. And I listened to these people talk about their schools. Some of them went to those really fancy boarding schools. They went to private schools in New York. They went to like, these fancy schools. And they were like, oh yeah, like these are my top 3 colleges because my school has a really good job of placing kids at Harvard or a really good job of placing kids at Princeton, da 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 da. I wasn't even thinking about that. But suddenly, I wanted to go to schools like Harvard and Princeton. And I wanted to go to an Ivy League college or something of that like the MITs, U Chicago, Stanfords, Dukes, the Vanderbilts of the world. And for me, that was social class mobility. It showed me that there was a world outside of what my neighborhood was giving me, and that there were richer people, there were smarter people, and people who were more successful than the people I surrounded myself with on a day-to-day basis. And it gave me such a vision for what my future could look like, especially because the first year I went, I was the youngest eligible age. And there were people who were freshmen or sophomores in high school who were starting to really think about kind of that next step of like, what are we doing to prep for college? I got that education from people who were older than me. So I learned just as much as I did in the actual summer camp programming as I did from my peers, these peers who were highly intelligent, highly successful, highly academic. And I credit a lot of my academic drive and ultimately success to that summer camp program.
I just want to take a quick break and thank the HubSpot Podcast Network for supporting Success Story for the past few years. Now, the HubSpot Podcast Network has other incredible podcasts like My First Million. Now, if you are an entrepreneur or you are ready to turn your entrepreneurial dreams into millions, you have to listen to My First Million. It's a show that is revolutionizing business podcasting. It's hosted by Sam Parr, Sean Purry. This is a HubSpot Podcast Network original. It brings you unfiltered conversations with self-made millionaires who actually tell you how they did it. If you want to learn how Alex Hormozi built his fitness empire or how Sofia Amoruso turned Nasty Girl into a fashion phenomenon, these aren't just success stories. They're the blueprints for your own journey to the top. Each episode breaks down the exact strategies and hidden opportunities that you can use right now. Don't just dream about your first million. Learn how to make it. Listen to My First Million wherever you get your podcasts. Is there a way for an individual to architect that environment? Because I fully agree with you. I think it's incredibly important. I mean, half of this podcast has been that, right? You sit down with like the best people in the world and it's great. It's a business. It's fun. It makes money. But selfishly, like I surround myself with people that think much bigger than I did growing up. So outside of starting a podcast and interviewing people, how do you architect something like that? Because I think that radically shifts the lens that you look at the world through. And I don't know, because people have asked me.
Yeah.
I need to surround myself with better people. And even before we press record, we're talking about how Miami, it's hard to find the right groups of people. And I think a lot of people end up wasting their time or somebody tells them a story about how successful they are, and it's hard to tell if you're legit or you're full of it. So how do you find your way into these groups?
Yeah, I think it's all about changing your proximity. So you might have a proximity of certain social circles right now, and you will only go as high as those social circles can get you. But if you start making inroads and start networking, especially with people in your workplace, so say you work on a team and you're like, actually, I'd really like to be on the revenue team. Maybe it's all about just taking somebody on that team, the most junior person on that team out and learning about what they do and then understanding better what those roles and responsibilities are and saying, hey, can I join your stand up on Monday mornings? So you can now have an understanding of what they do. Suddenly you're being invited to their happy hour. And oh, when there is an opening on that team, they know you've been interested for months. They're going to look at your resume internally before they even put it on the jobs post. And so now you've built a relationship. I think this is also something that I have been working on personally because it's really easy, especially now as a creator. It's hard to make friends. And I am so grateful when I do have a natural friend interaction, whether it's meeting, other creators or talent at events. And I'm thinking of a very specific scenario. I met a girl and became close friends with her friend. And then suddenly last week, I was out getting drinks with their whole crew. And everybody's impressive. Everybody's cool. Everybody's smart. Everybody's got something going on. Nobody is a stay at home, bonbon on the couch. Like everybody has a passion. They're not the same. Not all creators, not all media people, not all tech people, not all finance people. But everybody's got their own thing. And I think that is the most powerful piece is making sure your friend group is as diverse as you want the opportunities available to you to be. Because if you're going out to dinner with 10 finance people, you're only going to look at finance opportunities and what they can offer you. But if you have friends and coworkers and a network that spans tech, finance, media, fashion, beauty, like food, auto, like all of this, you suddenly have a, a literal peek into all of these cool things that are happening in all of these different industries. And you just get to see more and know more.
And also, yeah, so you get to see more, you get to know more, you open yourself up to all these different perspectives. I mean, I think some of the best ideas that I've had for anything that I've done in my life have come from some other industry that somebody's trying something new, some marketing strategy, some whatever, that they say it and you're like, light bulb moment. I've never heard that from anybody in my close circle or my industry peers, whatever. And I'm going to bring that in.
My big advice, though, when you're looking for friends, no haters at home. Holy
I
shit.
mean, no haters at home.
No haters at home. Like your friendship circle is your home.
Oh, yeah.
Like you do not want a friend who's going to like try to make you feel small to make themselves feel big. Like, I mean, I'm trying to think of the last couple times that I've hung out with my girlfriends. Like somebody will actually do negative self-talk and we will jump on them like a rabid group of hyenas and be like, you are not that. You are beautiful. You are smart. You are confident. You are capable. And like literally beat them up with positivity. You want your friends to celebrate your wins as much as they celebrate and help you commiserate your losses. Because you always think that a good friend is not only going to be there for you for the high moments, but also for the low moments. It's actually the other way around. Friends sometimes are really great at supporting you when you're down, but is that friend genuinely as happy for you when you succeed, even if it's a success that may have taken away from them? That is a true friend.
I also have found that the people that are actually successful, and success has many definitions, but they've been successful in their careers, like financially successful, and they're genuinely good people, they never bring you down.
No.
Those people that have had success are like 100% on board with every single win that you have. And if anything, the people that are truly successful, um, they're trying to find a way to like get into something that you're doing because they're so fucking excited about it. They're always thinking, they think differently. So when you have a friend who's successful and has made a lot of money and you're building a new business and they like you and they trust you, you'll actually have to tell them like, no, I don't want your help. I don't want your money. Like, please let me do this thing on my own, because they want to support you in any way possible. And it's a different conversation. It's just a different energy from somebody who is, I like, these words are so silly, but I mean, like, somebody who's abundant versus scarcity, they exist. It's a totally different energy. And I think that, I mean, it takes a little bit of being in enough rooms to understand who those kinds of people are. But if you spend time in the right room with the right people, that room gives you energy and makes you excited to go back and go build your own thing, or go take, I'm talking more entrepreneurial, obviously, but still, that room should give you energy to go take the next step in your job or take the next step in your career too.
Ultimately, you want every single relationship to be a cost benefit analysis, because when you go into that friendship, when you leave, how do you feel? Do you feel plussed or minused?
Yeah.
Because when I say cost benefit analysis, people are like, so you only have rich friends? No. Some of my friends are the brokest people on earth. Let me tell you, they've got 6-figure student loan debt because they turned right around after undergrad and became surgeons. But like, when you are with that person, does your energy feel more after you are with them or less? Do you feel depressed after you hang out with them, or do you feel like you could lift up a tree? Because that energy exchange has value. And I think we have to remember that, like, wins are infinite. Everybody can win. There is enough white space for all of us to be winners. And if someone doesn't think that way, they are going to try and take away your success without ever actually getting their own.
Correct. And that's why it's also important to define success. So success isn't always about wealth and money. But again, the people that you want to be in rooms with that at least give me energy, they're people that are focused on constant improvement. So yeah, it could be a doctor that has 6 figures in debt, or it could be somebody who's not even focused on material things.
Yes.
But they have a mission that they're very excited about. Like, they have purpose in their life and they want to achieve that, whatever that purpose is, but they also want you to achieve your thing as well. And I think that those are the types of people that you should spend more time around. Those are the BFFs. And I mean, rich, again, is not just about money. At the end of the day, it's about
Not even a
fulfillment
little.
across everything.
Yes. Having a rich life and being rich is emotional, it's physical, it's mental, it is financial, but it's social, it's how you approach your every single day life.
But people have a hard time focusing on all the other versions of rich when they're not even making enough money because they're so stressed out about paying next month rent. I mean, it's interesting why financial content does so well. Because, like, I know why it does well. People are stressed out. They're not making enough money. They feel like they can't afford to live. Cost of living improves, cost of living increases. But even with all the financial content, I feel like people aren't taking that financial content and actually implementing it into their lives. I mean, for example, your first piece of content, it got like, how many followers did it get you? That first piece of like
100,000 followers.
100,000 followers. So obviously there's a niche for it.
Yeah.
But because now you have a whole bunch of fans, and I'm sure you talk to some of them and some of them give feedback, and I'm sure some of them have taken the advice and ran with it. But there's a whole bunch that have not taken the advice and not done anything, and they just consume. Why do you think that is?
I think comfort with the status quo and fear of change is a big one. Like, it's easier to be slightly uncomfortable, always feeling like you're living paycheck to paycheck, than it is to put yourself in a place of discomfort for 6 months to pick up a side hustle. It requires you to do something new or different, and people don't like change. But I will challenge and say that it depends on the piece of content. I think people are, in my audience at least, very, very willing to try something. I think certain pieces of content still feel a little out of reach. So if I'm talking about, these are ways that you can save on when you're buying a home. Some people, that's just out of reach for some people right now, and that's okay. Not every piece of content has to be for every BFF. But for the simple stuff, I do think people take huge advantage and they're trying to implement it in their daily life. I think something that people also struggle with is actually being able to discern who on the internet is qualified and has the credentials to be talking about this versus who's just selling snake oil. Because there are a lot of financial gurus out there who don't actually have any qualifications. They don't have a finance background. They're just good marketers. They just know how to make a hook on Instagram.
Welcome to the internet.
Welcome to the
Yeah.
internet. But like, so if my content is literally slotted directly after that person's, they're looking at that video and then they watch mine, they may be fearful of taking action on the helpful tip that I've shared because they don't know if they can trust what I'm saying because maybe the person before me was unscrupulous.
I agree that, I mean, like finance education through traditional means is lacking. I mean, you don't get financial education in high school and university and college the way that you should. So the answer is independent content creators. But I truly do believe, and this is something that I just feel, I would probably have to poll an audience to really get some feedback on it. But I feel like we are in this era of people trying to just consume, and not take action. And I think that that's what I'm trying to actively fight against. But to your point, it's how do you discern who's legit, who's not, what information is credible, what information is not. So when somebody's going on this finance journey, that's a great question that they would be asking, like, how do I figure out where to start? How do I figure out where to start getting rich, building wealth? Who do I listen to outside of you? Like, what are the first steps that I should take that aren't too risky, that at least sort of get me going in the right direction? Because there's so many concepts around wealth building and making more money. Again, it could seem like drinking from the fire hose, and then there's a compounded problem of not being even able to trust the person that you're listening to. So where does that person start if they want to get rich and be wealthy?
Yeah, I always tell people that if people want to get rich, they should strip. And then they're like, oh, didn't realize it was this kind of a podcast. But STRIP is an acronym. It's just kind of a really easy 5-step method of like how to get yourself into a really like stable place that you can really start making some impacts in your life. So first and foremost, S is savings. You want to have an emergency fund in your savings. I would put it into a high yield savings account. So you want 3 to 6 months of living expenses set aside for this rainy day fund, this emergency fund. And this is going to help prevent you from going into further financial duress in case something happens. You break your leg, the wheel rolls off your car, your roof caves in, something bad happens. Then, once you have that emergency fund set up in a high yield savings account where you're earning more interest, you move on to T, total debt. And the reason it's a T is because people who pay down their debt will just pay it down willy-nilly. And that is mathematically not the right way to do it. So what you actually want to do is rank your total debt from highest to lowest interest rate, make the minimum payment across everything to keep your credit score in good standing, and then any additional pay down funds, you're actually going to put towards the debt with the highest interest rate, typically credit cards. So this is going to help you pay your debt off faster while paying less in fees, and this is the mathematically correct way to pay down debt. R, retirement. We talked about this earlier. You got to have a plan for future you. And so I encourage people to take advantage of tax benefits. Legislators write the tax code and the IRS enforces it. And the way that the tax code is written incentivizes us to do things that they want us to do and disincentivizes us to do things that they don't want us to do. So an incentive they want is for us to save for retirement and invest for retirement because the government does not want to take care of you in your old age. They want you to take care of you. So you're going to get tax benefits by tapping into an employer-sponsored retirement plan like a 401k, 403b, TSP. If you're in Canada, RRSP. So many letters, and they all totally make sense, right? But also tapping into things like a traditional IRA or a Roth IRA. Those stand for individual retirement account. You want to be able to leverage tax advantage accounts like a 529 if you want to help save for your kiddos' education. There's lots of options, but it's not enough to just open these accounts. You actually have to fund it with cash, and then I invest. So people always say, what's the perfect investment? There's no such thing, okay? When I worked on Wall Street, hedge funds would call us regularly and being like, yo, we made a couple bad calls. We got to unwind all of our trades. We're blowing up. If these people who have very literally billions of dollars of technology and research at their fingertips can't seem to get it right, what makes you think 15 minutes on Yahoo Finance is going to help you get there? You're not. What I say is invest in a diversified portfolio of index funds that track the broader market. So instead of buying an entire bag of Almond Joy candy bars, you're getting the Halloween bag, which is Kit Kats, Twix, Almond Joy, Snickers, what have you. So you're getting a little bit of everything. That's going to really help diversify your portfolio. And if you're listening to this and you're like, well, that was still gibberish, just utilize something called a robo-advisor. You sign up for the account and you take a quick quiz about your money goals. So what you have, what you earn, how old you are, what your family looks like, where you live, when you want to retire, yada, yada, yada. And then it spits out a diversified portfolio that makes sense based on your financial situation. And then they email you once or twice, I would say probably once every 1 year or 2 years to retake the quiz. So then if you've made a lot more money or something has happened or you got divorced,
risk tolerance
correct,
changes, all that.
It'll rebalance your portfolio for you. And then last but not least is P, everybody's favorite, plan. You have to have a plan of what your happily ever after looks like. Some people's happily ever after is I retire at 35, I live in an Airstream, I never wear shoes again. Not me. Not me. I would rather retire at a more traditional age, 60, 65, but I better have a vacation home. I better still be able to go on vacation. I better still be able to go and travel. I better be able to take care of Pickles, my fat English bulldog's like heartworm medication. Like, I want to be able to have certain things in my life and I don't want to have to worry about money. And if that's the case, like, you need to know what's that going to cost, because retirement number one in the Airstream and retirement in your vacation home look very, very different.
So I know you have a number.
Mm-hmm.
So your number is 25 million.
Yeah, that's my FU number.
That's your FU number. Okay. So
yeah.
Obviously that's and you know what though? I've thought about this because I'm listening to the podcast that you've been on before, and I was thinking about that number. And it's an FU number if you had it now, because there's ways that you can make that money last. But when you're like 65, that's like, it's an FU number then, but ultimately, I mean, if you made that over years and you were taxed on it and then you invested, like it's a lot of money, but it's still, the cost of living is going to increase too.
Yeah.
So that 25 million at 65 may afford you a very comfortable last few years of your life. But I mean, you still have to understand how to invest it strategically so you don't just blow through it either, because you can still F that up.
Correct.
I mean, people F that up all the time. And the best examples that we see are athletes who get these huge sums of money, then they're going bankrupt by the time they're 30. So it's really easy to fuck this up if you don't know what you're doing. So first of all, why is 25 million your number? Because I know that you're very strategic and you've done some math around why that's your number. And also, how should someone else calculate their number? Like, what's the mechanics? Obviously, you don't know someone else's life, but what's the thought process that you went through that somebody else can use?
Yeah. So my FU number is $25 million because $25 million invested, earning a very conservative 4% return every single year, would give me about $1 million in returns. And even after paying capital gains taxes on that, I would still be able to fund my lifestyle, fund my homes, fund my travel, fund any sort of expenses, and frankly, probably still be able to even help out my kid if I needed to. That's what it would take for me to have a very comfortable average life. This does not get you the private jet. This does not get you the yacht. This does not get you living in
There's $1 million a year.
Monaco.
$1 million a year. And then if you took you'd still have to pay capital gains on that. So,
yeah.
Okay, so you pay capital gains on that.
You pay capital gains. So you're roughly ending up with about $850.
And then, I mean, if you had a 2-person household and you had like 3 or 4 kids going to private school, like I'm not saying
3 or 4. Are you crazy?
Yeah.
1 to 2. Don't put that juju on me.
I'm just saying that money goes quick.
It does.
Money goes very quick.
Very quick.
So you can have an FU number like 25 million, but you still have to have a very
But
good
that's
plan
also
for it.
my baseline.
Yes.
My baseline FU. Obviously, frankly, I haven't even really thought too much about like what's my top end of it. But like, I would say $100 million, like I would not work anymore, ever.
I want to take a second and thank Range Rover Sport for supporting today's episode. Now, let's talk about tools that match your ambition, that match the ambition of everybody who's listening today, who has taken risks, who has up-leveled their personal, professional development, who has tried to build their own thing. Everybody listening gets it. There is a moment when the thing you're trying to build, the challenge that you're taking on, it finally starts to take off. there's like this rush of excitement and possibility, and that feeling that you get when you get behind of the wheel of a Range Rover Sport, because we've all had that perfect drive when the road, the car, and you're all in perfect harmony. But that's not just by chance. The Range Rover Sport is designed to make every drive feel that way. And the Range Rover Sport is not just for impressing others, it's how you feel behind the wheel. It's how you feel when things are going the way they're supposed to go. Whether or not you're navigating city streets, you're exploring back roads, the Range Rover Sport combines refinement with a sense of adventure. It matches your own versatile lifestyle. With features like adaptive off-road cruise control, you can tackle challenging terrain with confidence. The dynamic air suspension always makes sure you get a smooth ride. It responds to road conditions for optimal performance. So from daily commutes to weekend getaways, the Range Rover Sport is ready for whatever you have planned. It's more than just a vehicle. It is a companion for all of your journey. So if you're ready to elevate your driving experience, visit LandRoverUSA.com and configure your Range Rover Sport today. Well, that was my question. Would you stop working if you had $25 million in the bank?
No. I'll be honest with you, even at 100 million, I don't think I'd probably stop working.
For a different reason.
I would not stop working because I think it would make my mind turn to mush. And also because I find a lot of joy and productivity and doing something and building something. I think in my happiest fantasies of fantasies, like I build Your Rich BFF up enough to become a standalone business that can run with or without me. But then I get to do something else. I get to build something else. I get to, help the world more and do something different and still get to make money while doing it. So like, I don't know if I'll ever stop working. Like even in retirement, it won't be this. It won't be working 60, 80 hours a week. I'll be sitting on some philanthropic board, but I'll still like to do something because I think people think sitting on a beach somewhere for the rest of your life is the dream. It gets very old very quickly. And I've heard from founders who've literally founded unicorn companies. And they're like, yeah, after I sold it, I went back to work the next day. And I was like, what is wrong with you? And they were like, dude, like we took like a vacation and like that was cool. But like I was itching to get back. And I was like, is that really what it's like? And she's like, you'd be like that too. And I thought about it and she was right. And so it makes me laugh, but I don't know if I'll ever stop working.
I think that this is why conversations about wealth building are so important, because then you can start to build wealth and you can understand like, what are you actually optimizing for? What do you actually want your life to look like? Because the person who wants to retire at 65 is a person that has hated their job from 20 to 65 and takes 2 to 3 weeks of vacation per year and can't stand the reality and they want to escape it. So the whole goal of investing and having an FU number, and you still have to tell me how you came to that FU number, but getting that FU number and creating wealth and not just making more money, it's about architecting a life that you don't want to escape from.
Correct.
That's where I wish more people would focus on, because the second you start making money, you realize you actually don't have to make that much to live the life that you only ever dreamed about. Like, it doesn't take $1 billion to have a private chef or to go on the most lavish vacations that you've ever thought of, or even live in the house that you want to live in, maybe outside of like New York. But like,
Yeah. In New York, you really got to start dreaming.
in New York, you got to dream. But I think that there's such a huge gap between people's reality and what life can actually be like if you start to sort of deploy these principles.
Yeah. And back to your point of like, how do you calculate your FU number? It's you close your eyes and you imagine your perfect year. You live in the house you want to live in, you drive the car you want to drive, you go on as many vacations as you want to go on, you can buy the stuff you want. Maybe you are helping your kids, maybe you have a pet, maybe you don't. What does your day-to-day everything look like? And then you work backwards and think about, what would something like that cost for 1 year? Then you divide that number by 0.04. And for my friends who are not good at math, you should get a bigger number. 0.04 represents a 4% investment return, which is incredibly conservative. Right now, there are high yield savings accounts earning you more than that are FDIC insured. So you can essentially back into the number that you would need to have, this number that you'll get after you take your annual number divided by 0.04 is how much money you'd need to have invested, earning you basically your annual sum so that you could get there and retire comfortably.
And now this is very different than like the FIRE movement. So
Very different.
very different. So
I think the fire movement's icky.
first explain what it is,
Yeah.
because I found it on Reddit. I think that's where it lives. But why do you find the FIRE movement icky?
So financial independence retire early is the fire movement. And why it bothers me is because people are making such stupid, extreme measures to cost cut in their life to make this happen that I'm like, yo, maybe we don't have to steal all of the ketchup packets from the concession stand. Maybe we don't have to, share the same Q-tip with our partner. Like, it's like extreme cheapskates gone wrong.
That wasn't the goal of it though. Originally,
Nope.
it was to have a number and to
To
work
retire
towards that
early.
number. Yeah.
But it's become like a joke. Like people are just like doing the craziest things to save money that they don't need to be doing and frankly are not making that big of a difference. Ultimately for me, what bothers me is the fire movement almost feels like a pyramid scheme because the people who are touting the fire movement, they're like, what I've hit financial independence, I've retired early, you can do it too. Buy my course to learn how to fire appropriately. No, 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 no. If you actually hit financial independence and retired early, you wouldn't be working. You just have a different job now. Instead of your regular job, you are now selling courses. You are a digital media creator. No shade. That's what I do for a living. I don't sell courses, but like, no shade. But you didn't retire early. You still have a job. It's just a different job. And now you're trying to trick people into thinking that they'll hit this fire situation and then they'll be able to retire early, but then they'll just be stuck selling courses just like you.
You're trying to hit your FIRE number by doing this.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so stupid. That's so stupid.
so
I didn't know
stupid.
that's what it turned into. Okay, so for people again, just one last thought on this. Financial advice and people online, how do you discern who to listen to and who not to listen to?
I say anybody that gives you a weird feeling in the pit of your stomach, run. But two, if you hear a piece of advice or a tip or a hack or anything that you're like, I wonder if this is real. Google exists. Just search it. And then if there's reputable sources like the Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, Financial Times, New York Times, what have you, like all of these reputable sources are saying this is true. Investopedia can corroborate with what this person is saying. Then you'll actually recognize that there may be something to dive into and research more about here. But if there is one guy being like, you need to buy my ass coin and like it's going to make you rich, if you Google, the odds are good there are just a bunch of threads making fun of this person. If you cannot find someone to corroborate, someone from a reputable source to corroborate what you're hearing, then it's probably not legitimate. I even say this regularly. I am not inventing personal finance. Nothing I'm teaching is net new information. However, what is net new is the delivery. For so long, learning about finance has been so boring. And I am so grateful that like through the social media era, we've democratized financial education to a way that people actually find it interesting enough to pay attention. But simultaneously, you have to know because it's not net new information, you should be able to find it somewhere else.
I love that advice. You have a $25 million goal. If you were going to think about the strategy to get there, because this is going to be strategy that's applicable to anybody, do you try and earn more? Do you try and make it through investment? Like, how do you get to that $25 million goal? Like, I mean, you have your
The
script.
$25 million goal is the same as if you have a $25,000 goal.
Yeah.
You maximize how much you earn. You spend as little as you need to live a
Not ridiculously.
we are not canceling our Netflix subscriptions. You don't have to do that. I'm just saying spend as little as possible to live the life that you want that makes you happy. That is the key. Not as little as possible, period. As little as possible to live a life that makes you happy. That may not include 10 designer bags a year. It may include one, but you need to know what makes you happy. So spend as little as you can to have the happiest life possible and invest the difference. People are so surprised that because I make a lot more money than I did 3 years ago, I haven't already upgraded my apartment. I am happy in my apartment. I don't need to upgrade it. All of those dollars that I would have spent on that lifestyle inflation of getting a fancier apartment, I'm investing. Anytime I tell you to invest, trust me, I'm already doing it. I am investing. I have money in public investments. I have money in private investments. Every dollar that I am not using and that is not in my savings account as an emergency fund, I am investing.
When you think about the one thing you also have spoken about, we haven't really gone into it yet, but relationships and money. So obviously, money is very important in relationships, and you have. I don't think they are incorrect views on it, but I don't think they're views that everybody holds. Like you speak about money as soon as you start dating somebody. You set all these sort of like you put all these topics out there in the open. So what are the biggest things that people do not discuss when it comes to money, finances in the relationship they should be discussing earlier? Are we talking everything from how much we both make to our investment portfolio, to our prenup, to our where we want to send our kids to school? Is it all of it?
Yeah, it's all of it. So it's crazy to me that nearly half of all couples don't actually broach the money conversation until they're already engaged.
Is that true? You've looked into the data on this? That's wild.
Engaged?
That's wild.
Bro, if you are breaking up after the engagement, there's going to have to be some serious social media scrubbing. That's
Yeah,
embarrassing.
I know.
Whereas if you had these conversations earlier, you probably don't have to scrub this person. Like, you can just hide them. But my thing about this is sex and money constantly rank as the number 1 and 2 reason, depending who's doing the research, of why couples fight. Imagine if you could dramatically reduce the number of arguments you're having with your partner just because you've been honest and open and that line of communication has been there from the start. Do you know how much heartache that would save you? I feel so grateful. My husband and I, we fight probably once every 2 years. I can count on one hand the number of true fights that we've ever had. I mean, we're like an old married couple, so we bicker, and I'm like, can you pass me this? But whatever. But like true fights where we have differing views on something, it's probably once every year or two. And that makes the other 364 days really easy.
Did you speak about money and finance?
Very early, because we had to. So when we first started dating, I was living with my girl roommate, and about a month in, we had lived together well, so we moved into a new apartment. Not to be creepy, but it was a block down from where he lived. I wasn't stalking him. I just liked that neighborhood. But we moved into this apartment, and the first weekend, I was actually away. I was at alumni weekend in Chicago, and I get a call from my girlfriend, and she's like, "Hey, when you're back, we like need to have a talk." And I'm like, "I'm a millennial. Don't do that. What's going on?" She's like, "No, no, no." It's like I was like, "Are you mad at me? Like, what's going on?" She's like, "It's not anything like that. Please, like, just when you come back, let's talk." I'm like, "Ugh, okay, just ruined my weekend."
I know 100%. The anxiety.
Yeah. So I come back and she sits me down. She's like, "Okay, so the first night I was sleeping here, I was playing on my phone, just like looking at videos, whatever. And it was like roughly midnight. And so I put my phone down and she's like, I went to the bathroom before going to bed. And I went to the bathroom and I flicked on the lights and I saw 1,000 little things scurry away." As someone who's absolutely terrified of bugs, that was possibly the worst nightmare scenario of what she could have said to me. I would have rather her been like, "Oh, I stole your favorite top and threw up all over it." Like, roaches? No, I don't want that. And I had to move in with my then, he wasn't even my boyfriend. Like, I had just been seeing this guy for a month. And I was so down bad. I was like, "Can I move into your apartment for like a short-term period of time while I go find another apartment?"
Yeah.
And he said yes. And I'd been living there for a couple weeks and I was like, "I just like need to let you know that like this is how much I make. I'm spending this on my rent across the street. I can't afford to pay you or your roommate or like split any part of this rent." So I was like, I have to get financially naked with you, dude, because like I can't afford to pay for any of this. And he said, "That's okay. Don't worry about it." And he was like, transparently, like, "I make more than you. This is what I make. So I'm not that worried about it." And wow, what a weight off my shoulders. Because one, now I have more information. I know that I'm not putting him out. But two, he didn't need the money and I didn't need to contribute to that. ultimately, we were able to find a new apartment, got my stuff out of that roach motel. Blech. But like that horrible conversation that came from a horrible situation ended up setting our relationship off on the best possible and strongest foundation when two people who had only been dating for like a month and a half got fully financially naked about their incomes. It made every other conversation so much easier than that.
Because you know who that person is.
You know who they are, but
Yeah.
we've been so vulnerable with each other that when ultimately he and I moved in together, again, I had to be like, you know what I make. I know what you make. You know that I can't afford to go 50-50 on this rent. And he said, well, I'm not living in a shittier apartment, so I will just pay more. And I said, are you okay with that? He said, it's no problem. And I feel so grateful because for the first 5 years of our relationship, he made meaningfully more than I did. Like some years, 2, 3x. And obviously it worked out. That guy I'd been dating for a month is now my partner of 7 years. We got married. Like, he never made me feel less than for making less than. And he always was so generous and kind. He never held it as like a tit for tat or like something to bring up during arguments. He never did that. And these days, I am lucky in that I make 2 to 3x what he makes. And I pick up way more of our expenses now. I pay for vacations. I pay for stuff. Because I know if the roles were reversed, I very literally know if the roles were reversed, he would pick up my slack.
You know what talking about finance does is I think it just shows you the kind of person that you're with.
Yeah.
And that's either
Money does not make or break a person. It just magnifies who you originally were to start. If you were someone who was a bad person, adding money makes you worse. If you were a great person, adding money makes you better.
and when that person knows how much money you're making, you're going to see exactly what kind of person they are.
Correct.
And that's how you actually figure out, okay, is it going to be a good husband? Is it going to be a good parent to our children if we have children? Like all of that you can start to see more clearly.
And all of those traits that that person has with money and you are traits that they're going to have to every other aspect of their life. I mean, the one dating rule is like the guy who's not nice to the waiter is not nice, period. The guy who is not mindful about your finances and wants you to be in a comfortable, healthy spot doesn't care about you, period. Not just not about your money. He doesn't care about you, period. And I'm so grateful that I found a partner that those traits, his relationship with money, has been entirely reflective of his relationship with me. That generosity, that kindness, that conscientiousness. And those are traits that I hope that we pass on to our kids.
Yeah. Well, if
Yeah.
you have it in the house, you will. And did you have conversations about prenups and
Yeah.
all of that?
We had a real conversation because I was like, listen, like, you are more than fair to me. I think I've been more than fair to you. Let's be more than fair to each other in drafting a document to make sure that our assets are divvied up exactly how we want them to. We're 50-50 going in, 50-50 coming out. Only carve out is my business. Because why would any agent, manager, or attorney ever sign me again if something happened in our relationship and my ex-husband owned half of my brand? That's crazy.
When you think about the biggest mistakes that people make about money, not just in a relationship, just in general, what would be the sort of like the one lesson that you would want to leave people with?
That money's the most important thing. People think it is. It's not. Your most important thing is your time. And the more money I have, the less I value it. I think when I was in my early 20s, money to me was like a marker of success. And it was also the thing that I needed desperately. But ultimately, you can always make more money. You can't get your time back. And now, these days, the biggest luxury that I can afford myself is convenience and time. So people are always like, oh, Vivian, for a finance expert, your DoorDash bill seems a little high every single month. I'm like, my DoorDash bill is high. But you know what that means? That means instead of having to have placed an order, walked to the restaurant to get it, come back, and have wasted an hour, I can continue to work through that hour. And when the food arrives, I eat it. And that provides me a level of convenience, but it also buys back that hour of my time. And I promise you, my DoorDash hour is not worth my hourly rate.
When should people, because I agree with you completely, time is the most valuable, but there has to be a point where you are still more conscientious about where you spend your money. So on somebody's wealth journey and somebody's executing strip and they're doing all the right things, when should they start to buy back some of their time? What's that tipping point?
When that value of that time is not worth what you'd have made in terms of dollars. So when I was an intern, my sophomore year summer, I made $18 an hour. My time was worth $18 an hour. And not even, because I had to pay taxes on that. Now, my hour is worth hundreds of dollars. And so, yeah, when I was making $18 an hour, maybe my DoorDash order of $34 was not actually worth it. I should have just gone and picked it up. I should have just made the food myself. But now, $34 is a lot less than what I make an hour. And I need to be mindful of that. You always have to weigh the numbers. And I also think that you have to think about what you are abundant of and what you have little of. So, like, in certain cases, you are very, very abundant in youth and time, and you are very, very poor in cash. You need to prioritize the thing that you have less of. Whereas at a certain point, you are very, very abundant in cash and you want to spend more time with your kids. You want to sit down for a date night with your partner. You want to do all of these things. At a certain point, you're going to realize that there's a number that you would be willing to spend on that hour to buy it back. And once you hit that point, you got to start trading.
It's interesting because I think that people do that in their businesses. They build systems and they build processes and then they hire, but they don't do that in their personal life, which is very interesting to me. You can hire 100 employees, but you're still going to the store to pick up your own food for whatever reason, or you're doing the most remedial tasks yourself. So I think that this is just another piece of just like trying to optimize your time in your life so that you can focus on the things that matter. And I think that also you have to know what those things are, like your family, like time with your kids, whatever. Because again, if you don't know what those things are and you don't place value on them, then you're going to find ways to take your day, your day will be taken up with other stuff. Where do you want to send people to find more of your content, consume more of you? You have a second season of your podcast coming out as well. So give all the links. I'll put them in the show notes too. But
amazing. Okay, so everyone, you can find me as Your Rich BFF across social media. Season 2 of my podcast, Net Worth and Chill, just launched. Well, I guess it probably won't have just launched by the time this episode comes out, but it is a great opportunity for you to listen to celebrities, founders, experts talk about the money mistakes that they have made. I'm going in deep. I'm asking for numbers. I'm asking people to get uncomfortable. We're getting financially naked. So if you want to listen to Net Worth and Chill, please do that wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you want to grab a copy of my New York Times bestselling book, Rich AF, you can get it wherever books are sold.
The last question I always like to ask, I mean, you've had a great career, obviously multiple seasons to that career. So you look back, and you're not that old. So this question is usually for older people, but you look back, you could tell your 20-year-old self one thing. What would that thing be?
Yeah. So 20-year-old me was 10 years ago. The advice that I would give her is that she shouldn't be so desperate and insecure, because I have found a whole new sense of self-confidence now being in my 30s that I didn't have in my 20s. In my 20s, I was spending money I didn't have on stuff that I didn't need to impress people I didn't even like. And I wanted so badly to fit in. I wanted to be a cool girl. I wanted to be like the hot girl with the New York Wall Street job, that like all of the incremental thing that I kept trying to buy to get me there never got me there. You know what got me like that true confidence? Knowing that I had a savings account that could bail me out of trouble. Oh, by the way, I did get into trouble, Roach Hotel. The confidence came from becoming one of the top performers at my media job, having my face plastered on the scoreboard as the rainmaker. That gave me confidence. I got confidence from starting something that I built with my cell phone and my shaky hand turn into a 7-figure business. That gave me confidence. And I think about all of the, I don't even want to say dehumanizing, but like all of the really, really demoralizing moments that I experienced in my early 20s of the me just being an idiot, responding to you up texts, pining after people and opportunities that did not want me back, trying to impress a boss that was never going to like me. I would never do any of that shit now. I know my worth. I know who I am. And I think a lot of us could benefit from literally a 30-minute coffee with us in 10 years because there are so many moments where I just want to be like, don't you realize that you're the prize? You are the prize. Do not let anyone else make you feel less than for being who you are. And make sure that you have set up a solid foundation around you that's going to protect you through thick and thin. And over the years, you'll get the hang of it.